Guys, I don't know what to say about this video. The text you see here on the screen is not an embellishment. I have busted the majority of major repricing software companies lying about something extremely significant. This video is going to be dramatic, but we're going to have some fun with it too. I'm going to be doing some things they tell you you're not supposed to do in polite society. I'm naming names, I'm sharing screenshots, and I've caught some very big companies with a lot of money behind them straight up lying about something that is costing you, the small Amazon seller, money. So this is going to get ugly, but again, we're also going to have some fun with it. And now that this video is live, every single repricer is going to have to go on suicide watch. Okay, That's the level of scandal that I've documented in this video. Again, it's a literal sting operation. I'm also calling this the repricer conspiracy. Now, the word conspiracy, it's kind of fun to use it loosely, but I mean it very literally in the context of what happened here in the sting operation, what we're covering in this video. It is an actual conspiracy to actually cover up a blind spot that is present in every major repricing tool out there, except for one. A blind spot that causes these tools to not function properly, a blind spot they don't admit to, and a blind spot that they know if word got out about, that trust would be undermined, nobody would use their tools, and pandemonium would ensue. That's the level of what I've documented in this video. We're gonna get to screenshots here in a second. Okay, so here's what we're gonna cover in part one. I'm gonna cover what this conspiracy is and how this is actually this sting operation is kind of the product of a sort of revenge plot on my part. I'll explain that in a second. I'm gonna explain the sting operation. I'm gonna lay the ground rules. I'm gonna be as transparent as I can be because I know this video is gonna make me enemies, but I wanna make as few enemies as possible. So I'm gonna be really transparent with you about how I went about carrying out the sting operation. And then part three, the part you came for, this is the drama part. I'm naming names, I'm sharing screenshots, and I'm going to show you the smoking gun emails documenting repricing software companies concealing what I call the FBA blind spot from you, their users. If you're using any repricing software right now, your repricer is probably busted in this video, so you're going to want to watch all the way to the end. Now, how did we get here? How do we get to this point where I am carrying out a literal sting operation against repricing tools? Like, what is the backstory? This all seems insane. It kind of is insane. But let's back up for a second and let me explain the intention behind this sting operation. So the target is Amazon repricing software tools. These are tools that automate your repricing. There's over 30 of them out there. And the reason I performed the sting operation on them is to catch them lying about what I call the FBA blind spot. Now, I did a separate video and article about this. If you didn't watch that, that's totally fine. I'm going to outline very briefly what the FBA blind spot is and why it's so significant and why it's a big enough of a deal that I did an entire video about catching repricing companies lying about it. Now, before we dive in, I just want to say, as you're watching this, it's okay to be angry. I'm just going to give you a heads up. This is not a feel-good video. There is no happy resolution at the end. This is going to make you angry because I'm going to document, if you're using a repricing tool, your repricing tool, as I said, is probably busted in this video. And it might make you angry because you're going to feel like you got lied to, and you actually did, most of you. There's a couple tools that passed the test, and I will give credit where it's due. But again, this is not a feel-good video. It made me angry making this and doing this sting operation. It made me angry when I was victimized by this in the past, and it's going to make you angry right now, but I just want to let you know, you're in good company. That's okay. So why do I care enough to do this? Well, there's actually a personal backstory here, and I'll explain that in a second. Before I do that, let me get this out of the way. My name is Peter Valley. I've been selling on Amazon for over 15 years. I somehow became the world's most published author on Amazon selling. I don't know how that happened. And I'm actually a victim of the cover-up that I'm explaining here. That's why it's personal, but I'll tell more details here in a second. Just real quick, subscribe and like. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can build a whole business off of what I give away for free. Do it right now. Hit the button. If you don't do it, I will come to your house and rearrange your furniture. It's not worth taking the risk. I will do it. So you can save yourself the trouble. Just go ahead and subscribe right now. And lastly, I have a whole article version of this video. So if you want to share this with a friend, if you know other Amazon sellers that would benefit from this, which if you know any Amazon sellers, they're definitely going to want to watch this or read the article, send them the article, send them this video, do whatever you want. But there's an article version at fbamastery.com. Okay, so in 2015, I got scammed. Now, I told this story before, so I'm just going to tell it more briefly here. I got scammed by a major repricing tool. This happened during the peak of textbook season. I signed up for their program. They swore to me they were the only tool that had no FBA blind spots. I'll explain what that is in a second. And they lied. And it ended up costing me thousands of dollars during the most profitable part of the year because the repricing tool was mispricing my items because of this blind spot. And it's mispricing your items literally as you're watching this if you're using any of these tools. So it's one thing to not admit the blind spots exist, which is bad enough. It's another thing to look someone in the eye and say, we don't have any blind spots. And that's exactly what this company did to me. And that's exactly what almost every repricing tool did to me a second time as I carried out the sting operation. As you're about to see, I'm going to show screenshots. It's going to be impossible for these companies to ignore going forward. So now it sounds kind of weird. I keep saying blind spots. What do I mean by blind spots? Well, here's a fact. All automated repricing tools, except for one, all automated Amazon repricing tools have two major blind spots. And we're only going to cover one in this video. What I mean by blind spot is specifically pricing data that Amazon will not share with these tools. So these tools cannot see certain pricing data. So the bottom line is you think the software you're using in your Amazon business, like a scanning app, for example, is showing you all the data. It's not. You think your repricer is comparing your offer to all of your competitors. It's not. It tells you that's what it's doing, but it's lying to you. And that's what I've documented in this video. So how specifically does this impact repricing tools? Well, the FBA blind spot means that your repricing tool cannot see a significant percentage of FBA offers. So when it can't see them, it means as it's repricing your inventory, if you're an FBA seller, it's either pricing your inventory too low or it's not repricing it at all. Always gonna be one of these two things. If you have an item for sale that has a competing offer in the blind spot, and I'll explain this in a second. So this is costing you money, and no, you would never know this is happening. It's not like the repricing tools set off alarm bells or send you an email going, hey, we got a competing offer in the blind spot. They just simply ignore it and they hope you don't find out. And they hope that a video like what you're watching right now never got made. And so that's why I'm declaring all repricing tools on suicide watch starting right now. Okay, remember how I said there's two blind spots? I covered both of them in previous videos. So what I'm not gonna do is spend another 30 minutes recapping that. You go watch those videos after this video if you wanna learn more. I'm gonna very briefly recap for the benefit of those who missed those videos, but the sting operation really only addresses the first one here, which is called the FBA blind spot. Now I want you to take this in because I'm not gonna spend much time on this. Any item that is not priced amongst the lowest 20 offers in terms of price, lowest 20, is invisible to your current repricing software. Now, I want you to take a moment and take in the gravity of what I'm saying. If you did not know about the FBA blind spot prior to this moment, you should be freaking out right now. I'm going to say this again. Any item that is not priced in the lowest 20 offers is invisible to your current repricing software. Since FBA prices are usually priced higher than non-FBA prices and very, very often outside the lowest 20, that means that a huge percentage of FBA offers are invisible to all scanning apps and all repricing tools. That means it will appear to your repricer as though you don't have an FBA competitor when you do. Now, again, I spent 30 minutes in a previous video basically screaming about this, and all you get are these two slides, but I'm gonna say this one more time. If you are learning about this for the first time and you are not freaking out right now, that means you do not grasp what I just communicated. You do not grasp what the FBA blind spot is, and you must rewind this video like 30 seconds and watch this again and take it in. Because the impact this is having on your profits if you're an FBA seller is significant. Let me give you a quick graphic to demonstrate what I mean. Now we're here to talk about repricing tools. So I'm showing you a scanning app because there's no easy visual for repricing tools. Repricing tools do their work in the background. So there's no screenshot I could take to document the blind spot. But with scanning apps, it's actually very simple. You can see there on the left, there is the FBA column that is circled. It's showing 3 used FBA offers at the top, but then the column is blank because it can't see the lowest FBA offer. It's not in the bottom 20. When you click over to Amazon, you see a completely different story. You see multiple FBA offers. That is because the lowest FBA offer is in the blind spot. Now think for a second what this means for your repricing tool and the chaos that is happening behind the scenes that you aren't even aware of because of inventory that you have for sale that have a competing offer in the blind spot. Okay, so I hope you get this. We're gonna move on to the second one now, and we're not really here to talk about this. So I'm gonna give you more briefly here, even though this has a bigger impact on sellers. The bundle blind spot is blind spot number 2, which means your current repricer as well as scanning apps are unable to see a continuous list of lowest competing offers. Instead, what Amazon shares with third-party software are bundles of offers that appear to be one. The bundles can represent between one and several offers, and they appear to be a single offer. And you click over to Amazon, you find out that not every single competing offer is represented in the data that these apps display. And it's okay if you don't understand this one because we're not really here to talk about it. I just want you to understand that repricing software has 2 big blind spots. Now, if you're wondering why I'm only talking about the FBA blind spot with this sting operation, and I'm not focused on blind spot number 2, even though it has a bigger impact. The reason is this: repricing software companies don't actually claim that blind spot number 2 doesn't exist, the bundle blind spot. They don't claim to be able to compare your offer against the second and third lowest competing offer. That's why they don't offer that feature. However, they do claim to be able to match or price against the lowest FBA offer. They actually make that claim, but they can't do it a significant percentage of the time. So what that means is when they're telling you that you can compete against the lowest FBA offer, that's actually a lie a significant percentage of the time. And they don't admit this, and they don't want you to know this exists. That's why I'm fixated on number 1, because it addresses something they claim they can do that they quite simply cannot. So back to the sting operation. So after I got ripped off back in 2015, I vowed revenge. Yes, it took me a few years, okay? But we're finally here. Okay, now let's lay the ground rules. I want to be really transparent about how I went about this, because I think this video is going to elicit some major hate, not just from Amazon sellers. I'll get some of that from Amazon sellers who are really protective of their repricing tool. But I'm also concerned about the repricing companies themselves, and I don't want them to be able to come out and say, "Hey, he wasn't fair about this." Like, he tricked us or something like that. Okay, so I'm gonna be really, really transparent here. So I'm gonna show you the email I sent to these repricing tools here in a second. But the bottom line, the reason I'm taking my time with this part is I don't want anyone to be able to say that my question was in any way leading or the slightest bit confusing. I wanted the only conclusion you could come to after watching this video to be, wow, these repricing companies are hiding a limitation of their software. So let's check out the email that I settled on. And here it is. And this is the email I sent to these repricing companies, okay? So I'm gonna read it to you right now. And I didn't even hide who I was. So I said, question before I sign up, does blank repricing tool name have any data blind spots? Then I phrased it a second time. I rephrased it. When repricing, will I always be able to see and compete against the lowest FBA price? Then I rephrased it a third time. In other words, can I tell blank to match the lowest FBA offer for an item and have it match that price 100% of the time? A fourth time, are there any exceptions? I'm giving them 4 opportunities here. Are there any exceptions or anything that would limit my ability to always compete against the lowest FBA price? Now, hopefully you can see what I'm trying to do here. I spent a lot of time crafting this email. I spent like an hour crafting this. So again, I'm sending this to these repricing tools. And I want to find out, are they honest about the FBA blind spot? Remember, every repricing tool is subject to the FBA blind spot. It's not whether or not they have like better developers or anything like that. If they're using what's called Amazon's API, which they all are, as far to my knowledge, then they are subject to these blind spots. There's no way around it. Now, if you're not using Amazon's API, there is a way around it. I'll get to that at the end. But all the tools that I emailed are API dependent, okay? And I hope that we can all of us watching this right now can agree I provided a very clear question that allows every opportunity for them to be truthful about any limitations. Now, what you're about to see are their responses reprinted in full. There's a couple instances where the responses I got were so verbose, I had to kind of, crop them a little bit, but I never left anything out to create an exaggerated sense of omission or deception. Okay? So when I was preparing for this sting operation, I counted 32 automated repricers. And I probably missed some, but the number that I contact, and I'll give you the stats here in a second before we go to the screenshots, it's significantly lower than 32 for a couple of reasons. So here's every reason I decided to not contact a certain repricer. Number 1, if they were European only, I skipped them. Number 2, if they had no contact info posted, that's pretty shady, and I just assumed they weren't in business, or they're just not even they're not a serious tool if they don't have contact info posted. Enterprise tools, these are tools that only cater to massive sellers, like 8-figure sellers, or high 7-figure sellers. That's not really anyone who's watching this. I communicate primarily with smaller sellers, so it's just not relevant. And then one thing I left off this slide is also if there was a tool that had an automated repricer that was a very small part of what they did. In other words, their main product was something else, and they sort of bundled in a repricer as part of that. There's a handful of tools like that out there where the repricer really isn't in the top 5 things they're offering. It's just kind of like a little add-on item. They aren't really serious repricers, and most people aren't using them, so you probably never heard of those companies, so I just didn't contact them either. So that brings the total number of repricers that I contacted to 17. And this includes all the major repricers. And if you're watching this and you're using a repricer, I almost definitely contacted a repricer that you're using, okay? I didn't leave out anyone significant. So you probably think you had to wait until the end to get the actual results of this. I'm gonna give them to you right now. You ready for the statistics? I'm gonna tell you who passed the test and who failed. Okay, so the repricing companies I contacted, 22. Of the 32, there were 10 I had to omit for the reasons I just mentioned. Repricers who lied. Are you ready? Drum roll. 15, you guys. 15 of the 22 refused to admit the blind spot exists. The repricers who admitted the blind spot, who actually confessed, yes, we have blind spots, 2. And I'm going to name their names. I'm going to name the names of the bad actors and the good actors. Okay, so I'm going to give credit where it's due. Repricers who did not respond is 5. I'm going to give you a brief glimpse of the Hall of Shame, and I'm going to go through all these one by one. Here's every repricer who refused to admit the blind spot exists. Who didn't respond? These 5. Now, I'm going to go and assume these repricers are out of business. It's pretty unthinkable if a prospective customer contacts you and you don't respond. Yes, I did check my spam folder, by the way. And if you don't respond, you're probably not even a real repricer. You're probably out of business. It's kind of weird to think about, but some software tools can actually just be totally automated, and there's no actual humans running the ship. So entirely possible, in fact, likely that the repricers you see here on the screen are actually out of business. Okay, you guys, this is what you came for. This is the results of the sting operation. Every single email from every repricer I contacted. Are you ready? And again, don't get mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger if your repricer's on this list. Go talk to them. Take it up with them. Repricer number 1, Informed. It's one of the major repricers out there. Sent them the email that I read to you earlier. Their response: there are no blind spots, so you are able to set up a strategy that will allow you to compete with the lowest FBA seller on the listing. That is factually incorrect. They are hiding the fact that they have blind spots from you, and you see it right here, black and white. A bold-faced claim that they have no blind spots. If you hear a passion in my voice, it's because this is the exact type of email I got from the repricer that conned me all those years ago. I'm getting worked up, you guys. There is a deep rot in the repricing software world, and it's only going to get worse as we go through these slides here. They were provided a clear question. The same question rephrased 4 times. They had every opportunity to be honest, and they sent an email like this: there are no blind spots. How does that make you feel? Especially if you're an informed user. If you're not, how does this make you feel? It's going to get worse, you guys. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through this video. I'll be honest. Repricer.com, another major repricer, sent them an email, the very clear question, their response: yes, repricer can do that, meaning always match the lowest FBA offer. You can set the rules in such a way that it will, here we go, always match the lowest FBA price. What is happening, you guys? What is happening? There is a 0% chance they don't know about these blind spots. They've been in this business for years. The blind spot was implemented by Amazon in 2012. Now at the time I'm recording this, 2023, and repricer.com is still claiming they can match the lowest FBA price 100% of the time. That means that Amazon sellers, some of whom are small and struggling sellers, are surrendering their inventory to these tools, believing what they're saying, believing that these tools are doing what they claim they're doing, and they're not. You guys, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to make it through this. Be cool. This is probably the biggest repricer out there. Are you ready? My question could not be more specific and direct. Their email to me, and this is actually their second email. I'll explain the first one in a second. They said, if your eligible lowest FBA competitor is outside of your minimum and maximum price, then your price will not match their price. That's not what I asked. Okay, so it's a literal evasion of the question. Now, in the interest of full transparency, they actually sent me another email initially. The response was extremely confusing. It didn't in any way answer my question, so I'm not posting it here. Totally relevant. They just basically didn't understand my question, so I had to follow up with the second one. Next repricer, called Channel Max. I'm not too familiar with this one. Their response to my question: yes. By default, here's that word again, you guys, always. We will always match your price with the lowest FBA price. Again, I am coming to them. They don't know if I have 6 children. They don't know if I'm living paycheck to paycheck. They don't know if I'm down to my last $300. They don't know my situation, but they know that I'm trusting them with my inventory that I worked very hard for, presumably. Inventory, the payouts from which I may need to pay my rent, and payouts that are directly affected by these blind spots, by inventory that is either being underpriced or not repriced at all. And their response to me, a factually incorrect: we will always match your price with the lowest FBA price. Hey, Channel Max, whoever you are, I'm not familiar with you. Are you claiming you're not API dependent? How do you make this claim that you can always match the lowest FBA price? You know the FBA blind spot exists. It's right there in the Amazon documentation. So why are you making this claim? Is it because you don't care whether or not my profits are impacted? That's the only conclusion I could come to here, that you just want my money. You just want me to sign up. You don't care if I have to be deceived to get my money. You just want me to sign up. I don't know what other conclusion I can draw from this. Okay, I'm getting worked up. All right, you guys, deep breath. Next one, Alpha Repricer, another one of the major repricers. Sent them the email, their response. Thank you for your interest. No, we do not have any data blind spots. They go on. Yes, you will always, is that word again? Always be able to compete with the lowest FBA price. Absolutely ridiculous. Next one, Nitoscan. And this one's slightly evasive. I feel like they're trying to hint about the FBA blind spot, but they're not saying it exactly. They're not coming out with it. So they're still going to failing grade here. But they say, yes, you can always compete against the lowest FBA price. And then they go on to say, in some cases, we may not know certain details about who currently is the lowest, which seems to allude to the FBA blind spot. I'm not totally sure. But they go on to say, Amazon always returns to us the lowest price point, so you can always match that. Now, that is correct. Amazon does always return the lowest price point, but that wasn't my question. My question was, can I always match the lowest FBA price? And they seem to have their lawyerly politician answer here, where they tacitly admitting to the blind spot, but they're not wanting to reveal it outright. So, look, I asked a direct question. You give me an indirect answer. I don't care if you're hinting at something. You're not being forthright with me as a prospective customer, so you get a failing grade, Nitoscan. Next up, Profit Protector Pro. This might be the second biggest repricer out there next to Be Cool. Okay, their response. We have a non-algorithmic strategy, not what I asked, but okay. Match low FBA, whatever that means. This strategy does exactly as it says and matches the lowest FBA price. Okay, once again, not true. Okay, Profit Protector Pro, you are being deceptive. You are not being forthright. Give you every opportunity to be honest, and you're not. Next up, repricer called Eva. Their response, Eva will always update the prices based on the rules such as competing against the lowest FBA. The only exception can be, and they go on to say if Amazon isn't responding or something, that's completely irrelevant, has nothing to do with the blind spot. So they're claiming the only exception to whether they can always match the lowest FBA price is if Amazon is temporarily not responding. You guys, if this was a trial, it would be over. There is no ambiguity to what these companies are saying. They're claiming they don't have the FBA blind spot, which again has a direct impact on your profits and a direct impact on my profits. Next repricer. This one's called M2E or Magento. I think it's one of the ones that caters to like bigger sellers. I'm not really sure. Their response, Amazon is also your competitor, so it will be displayed in the repricing tool. There should be no particular limitations I know of to compete with the lowest FBA price. By the way, you guys, if you're sitting back thinking, oh, well, these are just some rogue customer service agents that like don't know any better, that's not how it works. I've run customer service teams before for software tools. You have a copy and paste chambered boilerplate response for every possible question you could ever get asked. There is no room for chance. You don't ever leave it open for your customer service people to go rogue and get you in potentially legal trouble. Okay, so that is not an option. These are big companies. These have a lot of money behind them. They're not stupid. They don't have people just making up questions. They don't allow room for that. Okay, so I just want to address that. Okay, next up, Seller Active. Another one I'm not too familiar with. They say from a data perspective, there aren't any blind spots. We're able to access the same data as anyone else. Yes, you can access the same data as anyone else. That's the problem, Seller Active. So you guys, I know I'm getting worked up here. Again, this is personal to me. Back when I lost thousands of dollars, I kind of left this out earlier. Like, I did not have thousands of dollars to lose. This was a point in my life where every dollar mattered. This is a point in my life where I was putting in burning major calories for every single book I got my hands on. So if you hear me getting worked up, it's because this does hit close to home for me. So I apologize. I'm getting a little unprofessional here. Next up, Seller Snap. They give a super confusing answer. If you really care, you can zoom in and like on the slide here and pause and like really zoom in. If you really want to read it, you can do that. But I'll suffice to say, this uses a lot of words to completely avoid answering my question, which is very clear. Okay, so they just basically just filibustered me with a word vomit. Sorry to sound weird, but they just spewed a bunch of words that are totally meaningless. Okay, Street Pricer, next up. Okay, so this one's also kind of weird. And I feel like I have to be overly transparent here because I don't want anyone to like attack me. So I have to give some context here. I sent them the email I read to you earlier, and they sent me a response where they asked for clarification. So I basically decided to go off script and ask directly about the top 20 Amazon API limitation, otherwise known as the FBA blind spot. I asked them directly about it. They gave me a very dismissive response on the next slide that I'll show you, and said that any impact would be exceedingly rare, which is either demonstrates extreme hubris or extreme ignorance, both of which I think we see a lot of throughout this entire expose here. Okay, so here is their email to me. They said, Amazon gives us the lowest 20 offers, which is true. It's more of a limitation on their end that affects all major repricers. However, that still should have no impact as we get the lowest 20, which aren't naturally ranked by lowest offer. So you shouldn't miss out on being matched against the lowest FBA. It would be exceedingly rare that it would affect repricing. So here they are, you guys. They are admitting to the FBA blind spot, number one. Number two, they're saying, oh, but don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But you guys, there is never such a thing as close enough when it comes to repricing. If you are trusting a tool with your inventory and they come back to you and say, hey, you know what? We get it mostly right. Is that an acceptable answer to you? Mostly right? What is mostly right? What is exceedingly rare? What does that mean? Give me a number. Is it wrong 5% of the time? 10%? 5, even if it's 2%. 2% every day, day after day after day, week after week after week. You compound that over weeks, months, and years. We're talking about massive amounts of money. There's no such thing as small errors when it comes to repricing because they compound day after day. So this is just like so insulting for them to be like, oh, don't worry about it, honey. It's like they're almost like patting you on the head like, oh, don't worry about it. It's exceedingly rare. It's like, if you're not doing what you tell me you're doing, I need to know. God, you guys, I need to take a deep breath here. Okay. Now here's a tool that was formerly called NewPrice. It is now called Reprice IQ, not to be confused with NeuroPrice. Now called Reprice IQ. I initially was on the fence about whether to give them a passing grade because they kind of do admit to the FBA blind spot, but then they pulled a switch at the end. I'll show you in a second. But this one is a little bit complicated. So how do I explain this, you guys? I sent them an email that is not the email I showed you initially. This is the first repricer I reached out to. So the email I read you initially is not the one I sent them, full disclosure. I sent them another email where I basically asked them directly about the FBA blind spot, okay? So their response to me was, sadly, Amazon doesn't have this functionality in their new API either, because Amazon updated their API recently. It's boring details here. We still have the ability to always see the lowest FBA offer if it exists, and then any other FBA offer in the lowest 20. So this conversation spanned a few emails, and we don't have time for all of it. But basically, when I asked for clarification, they said, well, we get the lowest buy box, and they seem to conflate the lowest buy box price with the lowest FBA price. They're not the same thing. They're just not. They kind of admit to the blind spot, but then they say, well, we get the lowest buy box price, so it doesn't matter. But that's not the case. That's not the same thing. Buy box and FBA are very, very different. There's a lot of overlap, but they're not the same thing. So the bottom line is I was very confused by their answer. I know they understood my question, and I think they were trying to evade it somewhat. So it's very unclear as to sort of what they're admitting to and what they're not here. And again, this spans several emails. But the one thing they don't claim is they don't claim they're not API dependent. They admit they're API dependent. So as long as we can accept, which there's no room to argue this, that Amazon's API does have these limitations, then Reprice IQ is subject to them just like every other repricing tool out there, okay? It doesn't matter the word salad you throw at a seller. The API restrictions are the API restrictions. Okay, moving on to Aura, another one of the big ones. Their response, you can set your strategy to match the lowest FBA 100% of the time. Do you guys notice that they're not even trying to give what I called earlier the politician answer? They're not trying to give like the lawyer approved answer. They're literally saying they're using words like always and 100%. They're not leaving any room for them to come back and go, well, actually, we never said always. Like they're just literally saying always. They're literally saying 100%. They have no shame. There is no shame to be found in these responses. It's completely insane. Next up, a tool called Channable. I can't make any sense of the email they sent me. It in no way answered my question, and which is the same thing as lying about it, in my opinion. I mean, I ask a direct question and you give me a word salad response, you're just evading answering, which is the same as lying. Okay, so those are the repricers that failed, you guys. You guys ready for the ones who passed? And by the way, I have to apologize again, you guys. I know I started yelling and stuff. Like, it's crazy what these tools are getting away with and what they've gotten away with for over a decade at this point, since the blind spot was implemented. But there were two who passed, and you got to give credit where it's due. There were two repricers that directly admitted, yes, we have blind spots. They didn't say they can beat the blind spot. They just admitted, yes, we do have these blind spots. The first one is a repricer called Celery. Their response, the one major blind spot would be if you were targeting FBA prices when there are more than 20 or 30 other sellers, with most of them being merchant fulfilled. This is the answer. If you can hear me clapping, this is an appropriate, responsible, honest answer. Okay, so hats off to Celery for this one. Next up, reprice it. Reprice it, which is kind of the main, I think the number one tool that like smaller sellers use, like the cheapest one for sure. They said, like all third-party repricing services, we only have access to the lowest 20 offers on Amazon. If the lowest FBA price is outside of the lowest 20, then we would not be able to price you against that offer. Again, awesome. This is the dream response. This is exactly what every repricer should answer with. And by the way, if you're sitting back and you're like skeptical does FBA blind spot even exist? In my other video about this, like I made the argument bulletproof that you can't argue it doesn't exist. But if you are a skeptic, why would these two companies admit something that doesn't exist? It's a real thing. Why would Reprice it break it down this explicitly? It's exactly what I said earlier. Okay, you guys, we're not done yet. I know it's been a long ride. It's been a long video. We covered lots of ground here. I told you, what the FBA blind spot is. I told you how these tools have a big financial interest in covering it up. And I demonstrated they are, in fact, covering it up. I contacted 22 tools. 15 of them were not honest about the blind spot. Okay, but we're not done yet. Do you guys want a solution? Now, you guys know that this video is the product of my revenge plot because I got conned by a major repricing company. My revenge plot was not quite complete until I built something called NeuroPrice. NeuroPrice is the only repricer in the world that is not API dependent, is not subject to the blind spots that Amazon imposes on other software, and is the only repricer in the world that has eliminated data blind spots. And it does this by working inside Amazon Seller Central and essentially hijacking Amazon to do your repricing for you. NeuroPrice is the only Amazon repricer in the world that works directly on the Amazon page, just like you see here. NeuroPrice is the only repricer in the world that has zero data blind spots, no FBA blind spots, no bundle blind spot, none of them. You can literally compete against all your competitors, lowest FBA, second lowest, third lowest, anyone. It is the world's simplest repricer, and I built it to be exactly that because I personally can't even understand most of these repricers. They're so complicated. NeuroPrice is a Chrome extension. It installs in one click and actually works inside your browser, which makes it unique compared to every repricer out there. NeuroPrice is the only repricer. This is quietly the most significant one of all. I know we talked about the FBA blind spot, but this bundle blind spot, the inability of any repricer to match or price against the second and third lowest offer, that's actually quietly the most costly blind spot of all. And NeuroPrice is the only repricer in the world that can price your offer against the second and third lowest competitor. No exceptions, no blind spots. The implications of this on your profits are massive. NeuroPrice also allows you to access a trove of other data, including sales rank history charts, price history charts, and a pop-up showing the lowest 5 used and new in both merchant fulfilled and FBA, just for those items where you want to give a little extra attention to. Again, NeuroPrice is totally automated, but if you want to give any inventory a manual touch, you have all the data you need to make manual pricing decisions as well. I'm going to put a link at the top of this video and below this video if you want to see a demonstration of NeuroPrice in action and start a free trial right now. You can hit the link, 14-day free trial. It takes 60 seconds to sign up. You can install with one click, and you can literally be repricing in seconds. NeuroPrice is quite simply the biggest advancement in repricing software since repricing software was invented. We're the world's first augmented repricer, meaning we augment the existing Amazon managed pricing page and work entirely inside of Amazon. Everything is included, the training and the tools, and it works on any computer, even if you've got a really old one like I do. So that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with me. This is Peter Valley signing off. Hit the link below, start your free trial to NeuroPrice, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.